I think that she is able to discuss it. I think when I didn't have good containment of it myself, like I didn't have a support group to talk to and other people were in the same situation, I think for me, I allowed it to spill over too much into our day to day connection. And I think the solution to that was me figuring out what process I needed to work for myself so that it didn't bleed over into our relationship.
Hi, all. My name's Lawrence Strauss, and welcome to the Family Disappeared podcast. It's great to have you along today for our adventure, and this is going to be part two of just a panel of parents talking about what it looks like navigating new marriages, new families, and the intersection between parental alienation and now new spouses and their potential kids and whoever else is involved in the family system. We started the conversation last week, and it was really interesting. There's some provocative questions and ideas, and some really great insights that the folks are sharing with us. So stick around for the episode. It's gonna be something. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit the button below. If you're on YouTube or wherever you are, hit subscribe, like, join the community. Wonderful resources in the show notes. Come out and check out the free 12-step meetings. Life changing, life affirming. If you're struggling, isolated, alone, don't know where to go, been doing this by yourself for so long, come out and join us. Check it out. If you feel like you're completely different than us, come on out and check it out. If you feel like you can't possibly sit in a room and hear about people's experiences, come out, check it out. You don't have to share it immediately. You can just kind of like take a temperature check and see if it's healing. So with that, let's jump into this next part of the episode. So like I said on the last episode, like I was really intentional about not introducing my children to people that I happen to just be dating or casually dating. It didn't feel like it was appropriate. I didn't want them to be on this emotional roller coaster getting invested in different people. It didn't feel responsible. And you know, 17, 18 years into this, would I have changed that behavior? I don't think so. There does feel something that I missed, and what I really missed was not knowing what parental alienation was, not knowing about all the moving forces that were in the background. So I would say this for me as I embark on new relationships and as I embark on just navigating life and friendships, intimate relationships, whatever it might look like I have learned through the 12-step program and through nonviolent communication to be really clear about what's happening for me and to share in a kind and useful way. And I continue to have a relationship with my 23-year-old daughter, and we bump into some of these conversations that even 3 or 4 years ago, I think I really would have screwed up. When I say I would have screwed up, I wouldn't have been mean, I wouldn't have been violent, I wouldn't have been yelling, but some of my ideas that I tried to imprint onto my daughter so she could buy into my version of reality, are harmful. And I will say with incorporating other family members and stuff, like I really have learned to follow out what my intention, because I have really good intentions, I think, and I think a lot of us do. But then beyond the intention, and I talk about this often, is the impact zone. Like I have an intention to include my daughters in a conversation on my intention to tell people stuff, and I don't take into account like the impact in their lives or the disruption or some other stuff that might happen with them. So this is a great conversation, and if you're in that place where you're trying to figure out how to navigate this next part of your life and to do it in a useful way as you struggle with the semblance of parental alienation or estrangement or anything else, working on yourself for me is the doorway, and it's an imperfect science and it's not linear, and it changes, and the more that I practice, the better that it gets. And with that being said, let's jump into the second part of this episode.
As this alienation, estrangement, reconnection, whatever is happening is going on, do you find your spouse disconnecting from the idea of the kids, like basically like shutting down and pulling away and not really wanting to engage in the idea or the thought of them, kind of like they're protecting themselves and closing down and don't want to necessarily continue to be part of those conversations? And I'm going to start with you, Ale.
No, my spouse is very in the thick of things in the sense that like I said, I share with her um, what's going on, the issues, the progress, the recovery, and she sees also. the the good things that are happening, especially lately with my son. So even when things were really hard, she was being supportive in the sense that she would remind me that um, that it was just a period. Presently, it was bad, but eventually, it will get better. And she's always reminded me of her having her door open. I remember her, asking me at Christmas, do you want to reach out to, she's asking me if I wanted to reach out to my son, to invite him for Christmas time and stuff like that. And because we weren't ready, I would be the one, taking it slow. So I feel that she's always been very supportive.
That's wonderful. It sounds very supportive, and that she's still emotionally invested in it and is not kind of pulling away. That's very sweet. And what about you, Steve? How does that look in your relationship?
Yeah, I would say in my relationship, I would feel very similar to Alain. My spouse has been supportive beyond really what I could have expected in a spouse. Honestly, with this kind of challenge, I think because she has experienced alienation herself with her own children, I think that she really truly does understand that the children are put in the middle. This isn't something they would choose or they would want. It's not ideal for them. And so I think for her, she really does help stay in that spot of kind of, if I get into kind of a mode of like, oh, that, that felt, that didn't feel so great, or that, why did that happen, or why did I get this reaction, this response? She's very able to come in and support and say, hey, this is the kids are in the, this isn't the kids, they're in the middle. And always very good to help give perspective. I've felt. So I don't think it's been. Yeah, I feel very supported, I guess. And I don't feel like it's kind of been a wedge. And she actually would welcome recommunication with my children at any time. There would obviously have to be some amends that would be made at some point, just on over some of the things that have happened over the years. But she's very open to that and supportive.
Thank you for that. And in my experience, like my partner was really supportive and really loving, but my partner's a separate individual from me who has feelings too, and her feelings get hurt. You know what I mean? And she's not willing to invest emotionally as much as she was. And we're not together anymore. But in the past, like, she would get burnt out because she's also getting rejected. She's also not being included. She's not even a human being in some aspects when some of the anger is directed directly at her. And she could be a cup, a person, a wall, but there's a lot of energy coming in her direction. And she has to pull away emotionally to some degree. I see my parents do that. I see my sister doing that. Like, they can't be as emotionally invested. And I'm hearing like neither of you really experience that. You're still experiencing your spouses as emotionally invested, and there you don't notice those nuances of them having to shut down as an individual separate from you, not in supporting you or taking care of you, but as an individual separate from you, just taking care of themselves. You're not experiencing that. Your present wife, did she continue to have a relationship with your son when you weren't having a relationship with him?
No, 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 not at all, not at all, because everything was going through me.
So she never had a direct relationship one-on-one with your kid. It was always
No, no.
coming through you. Got it. Okay, cool. And Steve, you had said your current wife had a relationship with your kids and then didn't have a relationship with your kids. And as an individual, like, how did you see her coping with that?
Yeah, honestly, one of my children actually worked at her business for a summer. And my son, who was younger and lived with us 50% of the time before the alienation, they were planning. Sounds funny, but they were planning trips that she, they both love to travel. And so they were planning trips and thinking about the future and all that kind of stuff. And, um, I remember one time, my wife said, it was speaking to my son and said, I'm gonna convince your dad to start doing more traveling to do some of these trips and stuff. So they had a really close relationship. And I do think that she did extend herself and connect, with my children. And I do think the alienation, she felt very hurt by it because she did have a relationship with them individually, aside from just through me. She actually connected with them on different things. And yeah, I think it was pretty hard for her. I think she felt the loss too.
And does she feel like really emotionally present when you are talking about the kids and engaging with the kids, or do you feel like she's had to put up a certain degree of a boundary, a wall, whatever you want to call it, to protect herself? Are you feeling that dynamic in the relationship or no?
I think that she is able to discuss it. I think when I didn't have good containment of it myself, like I didn't have a support group to talk to and other people were in the same situation, I think for me, I allowed it to spill over too much into our day to day connection. And, I do think there were times where I think the solution to that was me figuring out what process I needed to work for myself so that it didn't bleed over into our relationship. I think she's was willing to talk about it at any time, but didn't want it to be a 24/7 ongoing, every waking moment type of thing, which is where it can feel like it is initially when you get confronted with the depth of the loss and despair of being disconnected from your own kids.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, and the early days and months, years can definitely feel like a vacuum, and everything kind of gets sucked into it, and it's hard to find yourself. So yeah, thanks for saying that out loud. And I know everyone here has a young adult children, and there's this idea that we have, as we're struggling with it, once they turn 18 or once they move out of the house, like you're going to see a distinct shift in the relationship. And starting with you first, Stephen, did you have the idea like 18 moving out, there's going to be a change? And has there been a change with either of your kids that you can track specifically to the moving out of the house, or even if it's at a later age and they're done with college and moving out? Like, have you been able to track some kind of seminal point or something like that?
With my daughter, because we started, even though the court awarded 50-50 custody, when she was 13 and my son was 8, she never, really ever came to my house, during for custodial times, as I said before. So I had hoped that, like I said, I went to all her, high school activities. Anywhere that I could attend, I did. We spent time together sporadically, but not, extensively at my residence. And, um, again, that was a choice by me not to litigate, at that time. Um, but I did have the hope that when she left for college and got on her own, kind of out of the, I don't even know what the best way is to say this, got out of the environment of someone who was actively alienating, that things would change. And, unfortunately, in the situation with my daughter, they didn't change, as I had hoped. So, and they still are not changed to this day, besides the invitation to the wedding, recently. With my son, he just recently left for college, and I would say there has been some change. I had those 2 reunification counseling sessions that opened up some communication, and there have been emails going back and forth sharing about what's going on in his life, and me sharing what's going on here and asking him questions. There's not a lot of there's only I only had one in-person connection with him when I went to visit him, shortly after college started, and there hasn't been anything since then. But I would say there has been a shift when he left home. And I'm not sure what that shift is because I don't know what it is on his side, but he's at least willing to communicate via email. And for right now, I've accepted that that's what's comfortable for him, and that's okay.
Mm, mm. So I'm hearing like the relationships are different with both of the kids, and there's no set rules. And with your son, there's definitely a shift, and you're kind of exploring what that is. And your daughter, there wasn't any, and the wedding sounds like a possible beginning of some kind of movement. And I think the moving out, the starting college, the getting married, these are all seminal events in young people's lives that can be access points and opportunities. And LA, what about you with your child turning 18 or moving out of the house or college? Have you seen a shift, or has that been your shift at all?
Yes, I definitely did see a change in his mindset. Um, when he started living by himself, that is when my relationship started to um, rekindle with him. We were talking once a week, once every 2 weeks on the phone, exchanging emails. During the pandemic, we would do activities together, training, um, having dinner on, virtual dinner together and stuff like that. And it's during those 3 years, when he was living by himself, his mom was out of the country, and when she came back, that's when the alienation um, got worse. So things were getting better, and then when she came back, things really got worse, and it was even worse than what it was beforehand. So there does seem to be a relationship between, the closeness or the distance between the alienating parent and the child, and how the alienation is being expressed. That's what I've seen.
And your relationship the last 3 or 4 months, you had said there's a shift. And how old is your son now? And the shift is directly related to him moving out again, or starting college, or getting married. I'm not quite clear what the shift is.
I don't know what brought the change of mind, but I just know that there is a shift, that is an openness now for the last couple of months that was not there before. So I have not discussed with him why it is, but there is definitely an openness. The way he speaks, this summer, he was the one that asked if he could come and visit me. So he came for almost a week at my place, and we had fun. We connected. Um, it was excellent, and but it was on his agenda, or um, it was him opening the door, and he even verbalized it, saying that he wanted to rekindle relationship, and to start with on new basis.
Well, that sounds really, really beautiful, and I'm really excited to hear more about that as it evolves, because it's a curiosity. And I hear that he's reaching out, he's generating energy, he's getting to the age where he's able to ask for what he wants, and you're fully available, and you're doing work on yourself, and it makes this a great opportunity for both of you. That's very sweet. And tapping into both of you reconnecting to certain degrees in different ways with your kids, what emotions come up for you as you're getting a tiny bit more access in different kind of ways, and what expectations come up with those emotions? And I'm going to start with you first, La. What kind of emotions are coming up for you this last 3 or 4 months, and are these expectations and these fantasies or these ideas that come along with that?
Fear, fear, fear is present, because it's um, the counterpart is joy, to see that, oh my God, that at his age he's able to have his eyes open and to see what's going on. He's able to stand on his 2 feet, stand his ground, and have the intelligence to see um, what is happening and to be emotionally mature to do all this work that he's doing. Um, and so that's great for me. The feeling that I have when I see this with my son, it's like, wow. But at the same time, I'm fearful that um, this could go away in a snap of a finger. So at the same time, because of the reality of parental alienation, where you have kids that are 50 years old and that did not reconnect with their parents and did not let their grandkids, connect with their grandparents. So there is that reality out there. So for me, I try to temper my 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 joy and to just take it one day at a time.
That's beautiful. And I'm hearing the joy as a parent and as a father of just watching your young adult child step into some of their own power and their own agency. And there's a lot of love, appreciation, enjoying that I'm hearing you. And then the opposite side is, oh, this can get pulled out at any second, and I don't really understand what's really happening. I'm enjoying it, but because I don't have more understanding of the dynamics that are happening, the fear gets really kicked up. And do you have an expectation what this is going to look like in a year, or are you just like it's going to do whatever it's going to do?
I do not want to have an expectation because, like the first step says, I'm powerless. So I just have to accept um, what is happening. So I try not to have an expectation. So I'm hopeful that it just will not revert to, full-fledged alienation. But I'm really mindful that, I should not, um, you know, break out the champagne and to say it's over. So no.
Totally. And I love that you're working a recovery program and an emotional program where you don't have those expectations. You don't drag yourself down the bunny hole. You know what I mean? Because so many of us get caught up in that loop and we willingly jump into those dark spaces and down the bunny hole because it's familiar. And I'm hearing that you're keeping those expectations at bay. So I think that's really healthy, and I appreciate you sharing that. And Steve, what about you? Like, what emotions come up as you have these touch points with your son and your daughter, and are there expectations for what's going to happen next?
Yeah, I would say much the same to what Elaine shared. I would say I'd put it under the title of guarded optimism. So, so there's definitely fear and unease, but there's also joy and expectation, right? And how to kind of balance those two in a place where I don't get upregulated or dysregulated, and I try to focus. I guess at each stage. Right now, I'm having an occasional. I've had just a few emails with my daughter, but it's mainly about like insurance, and I think my gut feeling is that things will go back to silent. And whereas with my son, I'm having an every other week kind of email update that we go back and forth on, and I think I'm just really working on staying in a place where I just take, like Elaine said, one day at a time. I just take the relationship where it is right now. I try not to think about what the future. I mean, I do have a hope that I will have that family connection that I once had, and that it will be even better and different and unbelievably great in ways that I don't even understand or comprehend. But right now, it's not that, and so I have to temper that with this is the situation today. This is how I can respond to it today, and really working on the idea that I just want to be the best human being and dad that I can be when and if my kids decide that they would like to have more contact with me. And that's where I try to keep my focus, because the rest of it is, as Elaine said, is out of my control.
Yeah, yeah. I hear that, and I hear the complexities of the two different relationships, and feeling a little bit more continuity with your son, and maybe a little bit more challenge with your daughter, and also that recovery and putting expectations an appropriate place where it's not ruling your life is what your answer is. And I'll share for me. On In March was my birthday, and my middle daughter reached out for the first time in 3 or 4 years, and we texted a little bit. And I feel like I've done a lot of work, and I can communicate pretty clearly and ask in a useful way if there's anything that I'd like, and I've let her lead the conversation. And I have all kinds of expectations. Like, I have an expectation for the relationship to change. I have an expectation to see my daughter. I have an expectation to meet my grandchildren. You know what I mean? And in those expectations, I've created a lot of harm for myself because none of that stuff has happened. And I like what LA had to say, is that his son's leading the conversation at his pace and in the way that he wants. And LA doesn't even know what's precipitating this. So I think there's a lot of wisdom there that I'm going to learn from you today, LA. So I really appreciate that. And when I say I'm going to learn, I listened, and maybe I'll apply it, or maybe I'll lather myself up in the discomfort and pain, and just sit with that because it's familiar. It's not useful. So don't do that at home. It's not useful, but it's familiar. And unfortunately, we do the familiar sometimes out of habit. So to follow up on that question, as you're having some connection with your kids, do you feel like alienation is still present and part of the conversation, and basically has its own seat at the table? Like, I use that analogy a lot. Like, there's still something there with me, even though I'm interacting with my child. And we'll start with you first, Steve. Do you feel like alienation has a seat, has an inertia, has a power, or some dynamic in those relationships?
Yeah, I do. I think the way I look at it is the kids unfortunately aren't given a choice in this situation. Now my daughter is older now, and I think she does have a choice as an adult. But when it started, she did not have a choice, and I think it does have a power because it's to me, it starts right as the idea of the child having to make a choice between one of the two parents, right? So that there's an inertia there to maintain the connection with I guess you call it I don't want to say the favored parent. Maybe that's not the right term. I don't know what exactly the right term is, but the parent that's chosen versus the alienated parent. I do think as time goes on, the longer it goes, there is some inertia to that state of affairs becoming normal and becoming normalized for the child, to where that's accepted. And then you have, of course, all kinds of family dynamics that would make potentially alienation or disconnection more comfortable if that's been in the extended family or through the lineage and multiple generations. I think it makes it, yes, I do think it has an inertia, and sometimes that inertia feels like it's really hard to overcome. And to be honest, I don't even sometimes know how to overcome it, other than me showing up as the best version of myself and being available in and useful in a way to support my children when they are needing support, and just being the best version of myself for them when and if they need me.
Thank you for that. And you spoke to the idea that the kids, the young adults, whatever age they are. I'm just using the word kids to cover that whole spectrum. That they have a lived experience, and this is their lived experience, and their reality is that this other parent is the primary parent in their lives, and that becomes the lens that they're looking through. And so that's what I heard, that you feel you're navigating that new lens, that new prescription per se, as again, as another metaphor. They have a new prescription for life, and it's a little bit different than your prescription.
Yes. Yep. And in our case, there was on my ex's side of the family, there's a lot of disconnection. There's a lot of people being cut out of the family when they don't act in an acceptable or appropriate manner, or sometimes they act in a manner which is really unhealthy. Some of it's really unhealthy. Some of it's just that there's this there's this response to when things don't go well in a relationship, we just cut people out rather than learning how to work through relationships and develop community and build relationships and work through difficult times. And that's sort of hard to overcome when your children see that as a pattern as well.
Mm. Right, right. So their environment definitely influences how they behave in other relationships. And Elaine, how does it feel in your relationship? Does it feel like parental alienation or the dynamics of that are part of your conversation and part of something you have to navigate each time you connect with your son?
Well, parental alienation is present in my relationship with my son mainly in the form of fear of of stepping on some mine, on some unexploded mine. So it's so that we, I, the relationship does not revert um, to what it was. So it's a constant fight of letting go and not feeling that I'm walking in a minefield or walking on eggshells, and just what will happen, and just to be free and free flowing in the relationship, in the dynamics and the exchanges. So I think for me right now, that's the way parental alienation is expressing itself with my, in that dynamic with my son.
Right. So I'm hearing like fear, unexploded minds, and that you're just trying to navigate stuff as best as you can, but there's always something around the corner that you're not quite sure what that is, and you just don't want it to go back to the way that it
Exactly,
was.
crossing my fingers, like, okay, I hope you didn't say something. But yeah, so mainly it's managing that internal fear so that I don't have that weight constantly on my shoulders. So it's really dissipating that. That's challenging.
Mm. Mm, that's wonderful. I appreciated both of your answers. And for me, in my relationship with my youngest daughter, I have a relationship with, is I feel parental alienation at a seat in the table, right? And it might not even be me or my daughter, but it's part of the family system. That's, the stars and the moon and the sun that's there, that is affecting like the gravitational force in our conversation. And depending where we're sitting, it looks different for each of us. So I feel like that's never going to leave, and that's always going to be part of the conversations because it's part of both of our lived realities, and they're different. They're both different, but they're both real. So, well, there's a lot in the conversation today, and there's some bunch of stuff that came up that we didn't really get to discuss. But as we're winding down here, like, what do you want to let anyone know that's struggling in the beginning of parental alienation? Someone that might have no contact, or someone that's just starting to have contact again. What would be the two most important things you would like to share about your journey in recovery, or not, or something not to do? So if you can both give me just like two things that you'd like to share before you wrap up the show, and we'll start with you, LA, and then we'll go to you, Steve.
What I learned, and the most important tool that I learned, is accepting the powerlessness, accepting that, I cannot control what my son thinks or what my ex is going to say or think. If For me, letting go and accepting this powerlessness, not trying to have control on the outcome of the relationship, trying to mend it is the first recommendation that I would give. Second thing is accept that your child um, has the intelligence in seeing through the this craziness, which is parental alienation. Um, Accepting that it may The realization that that child will have may be quick, and hopefully it will be quick, and sometimes it'll take a bit longer. But trusting in the child's intelligence, insight, um, love, also trusting in their love for myself as the parent, um, trusting in the good times, that they'll remember the good times and realize, that yeah, they were true. So that to me is, what I would say to other parents, because for me that really helped me out.
But I would say the first is I agree with Elaine, what Elaine said with recognizing my powerless, but then maybe a step further is recognizing my powerlessness and control over the situation, but recognizing God or my higher powers control and understanding of the situation that is far beyond mine. That would be probably number one. And then number two was I tried to force a lot of solutions. And forcing solutions is can be anything from forcing your kids to have to communicate with you by, over texting, over messaging, putting them in a position where they feel like they don't have a choice and they have to respond when they're not ready to. I just remember that there was a good period of time where I was trying to force solutions, and forcing solutions usually doesn't work, and it didn't work in my case. And then maybe just slightly associated with that is also, there were times where I was really upset, with my children for what was going on, and I didn't realize I didn't have the view that they're clearly have the view that they're suffering too, meaning that they might not even have recognized it yet. They sometimes haven't come to a full understanding because they're young. They're either teenagers or they're young adults, but that they're suffering too. They're suffering a loss. They're suffering the absence of a parent, which has got to be, I mean, in my mind, has got to be heartrending. And giving compassion and love, giving just an abundance of compassion and love to my own children, that they are also going through this difficulty called alienation, and it's not something they chose, and it's not something they would choose. And so that's probably the last thing, is just really being in a place of just really being able to share compassion and love for the situation and understanding the situation they're in, rather than constantly thinking about the situation that I'm in.
Thank you for that, Steve. And again, not forcing solutions, and also the realization that our kids are struggling too, and they're suffering too, and it's just a rough situation. I think a lot of us early on come through the focus of my perspective and me and as a parent, and how can you treat me this way, and everyone is struggling and everyone's suffering. So I love that, and I love what you shared, Alay. And gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the show and taking a little bit of time out to share some of your experience, strength, and hope with the community. And I hope you both have a beautiful day.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank
Very
you
much
very much,
appreciated.
Lawrence. Thanks a lot, Steve. That was great.
Thank you, Elaine.
Wow. Wow. That was fun. That was a neat conversation and some different perspectives and some different voices to be heard on the show, which I think is really important. We do have quite a few folks that have been regulars and continue to share with us their life and their evolution, and to hear a couple new voices on the show is really rich and important. And we'd like to be as inclusive as we possibly can with anyone out there that has something to share or a perspective. And we're always going to share from a recovery basis, because this isn't about shaming, blaming, or pointing fingers at other people. This is about emotional and spiritual change, and this is about self-agency. And self-agency is us taking responsibility for how we show up in every relationship. Even though we're hyper-focused on the relationship with our kids or grandkids or parents, it's really about every single relationship, because wherever I go, there I am. And if I'm not working on myself, I'm just right back to the beginning. It's kind of like playing shoots and ladders. Like I think I got something going on and I'm figuring it out, and then I go down a ladder and I'm at the bottom of the ladder, and somehow I think it's a bad thing. But clearly there was something left for me to learn, and then I learn something different, and I get back up to the ladder, and hopefully eventually I get to a different part of the game. And with that being said, please like, subscribe. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We can use your support. We'd love to expand the services and the trainings and all the different things that we offer, and that are on hold for a certain part until we're able to figure out the financial mechanism. And we look forward to seeing you on the next show. And as always, really enjoy and appreciate your support. And in case no one's told you yet today, I love you. I hope you're having a beautiful day. I hope even amongst the struggles that you can take a moment and just appreciate that you're showing up, that you're living your life to the best of your ability, and you're putting that one foot in front of the other foot. And sometimes you're going sideways, sometimes you're going backwards, but you keep coming back. So with that, have a beautiful day, and we shall see you around the neighborhood.